every single day, I get an email or a phone call with somebody pitching me to be a guest on this show. Now, you want to take one guess why? Yeah, it's because you have a target on your back and it's made out of dollar signs. Each of you is unique and you deserve quality advocacy. And it's my mission to provide you the information so that you can find the, unfortunately, unjustly hidden roadmap for first-time homebuyers to home ownership. So this is why you might notice that I don't have a lot of guests on the show. And the guests that actually do come on the show, I have them because I've sought them out. I found that they're in the background fighting the good fight for the little guy, working to balance the unjust scales of first-time home buying. And recently, I found an awesome person who specializes in a question that many first-time home buyers struggle with: the moving conundrum. Should you stay or should you go?
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
Oh, homies, welcome to a special edition of How to Buy a Home, the podcast. I'm so excited today because, as you guys know, I scour the internet searching for anything and everything that has to do with you first-time homebuyers. This is really exciting because I found another one of those wonderful, giving, altruistic people who really has just been through some personal stuff on her own, and now she wants to share it all with you. And guess what the topic's about? Moving. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it. This is Mariette Frye, and we started talking the other day, and it was so ridiculous we didn't have microphones turned on that I said, come back and let's turn on microphones because we would not shut up. Mariette, say hello to all the homies out there.
Nice to meet you all, homies. I literally had so much fun with you that I was like thinking about all the things that we could talk about when you and I recorded on your show. Like it was ridiculous. Like we talked for over an hour, I think, right?
Yes, definitely.
Ridiculous.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I was a guest on her podcast going over all these wonderful things that I tell you guys all the time. And the whole time I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, everything she does is this information that you guys need. So explain to us how the whole Mariette moving tips and tricks things started.
Yeah.
We love to hear the origin story.
Yeah. So I now have moved 20 times in the last 24 years to 6 of America's top cities. But the original origin story is that I moved from Chicago to San Diego. My very first cross-country move, my stuff got held hostage by a scam mover. And so I had to go through finding an FBI agent that helped me get my stuff back. So that's kind of how this all was kicked off. So as I went along, I was able to gather some tips and tricks and like scams to avoid. And I remember thinking at the time, like, holy cow, this is such a process. Like I can't be the only one going through this. And then I ended up moving again and again and again and again, and mostly for corporate relocations. I will tell you that, but it was always something that I did on my own. I wasn't like having a company that relocated me. So I learned a lot of stuff. And right before the pandemic, my brother is a film producer, and I've done a lot of acting and improv and fun stuff in my life. So I was like, let's do a TV show. Like there is so much drama when people are moving out. Like, remember the HGTV show? Well, they're still pretty big now, but it was all those people like, remodeling their homes. I'm like, the drama is when all the stuff's like leaving the house or they're moving to a different house. Like, why aren't we talking about that? This is so fun. So, that's what we started doing. We filmed a pilot, and then the pandemic happened. And I was like, let's turn this into a podcast. Like, I love podcasts and everybody else does. So that's how it started.
That is so amazing.
Yeah.
It's really true. You find these things and you think, why don't more people talk about this?
Yeah.
The homies ask me all the time, why don't they teach us this in school?
Right.
And
Right.
The simple answer is there's no one as fun and cool as you who works for a moving company. Otherwise, somebody else would have done it and figured out how to make money out of it. But instead, you're just doing this out of the goodness of your heart, and your podcast is doing gangbusters.
Yeah.
We're gonna put all of Mariette's stuff in the show notes, guys, so you can find all that.
Thank you.
But I'm so excited. After I did her show, we ended up talking. I think we're going to do a couple podcasts with her.
Yeah.
So today we're going to start with the basics.
Yep.
And then we're going to save the scams and the stuff to look out for later on.
Yes.
Okay.
You haven't bought the house yet, right? Let's pretend that, right? We'll talk about the pre-stuff. The pre-stuff.
So now tell us about this, because this was, I'm sitting here screaming on the microphone all the time. It's not too early to start preparing. So tell us about by the way, you're a crazy ass nomad. That's insane.
I am. I interviewed this woman. Her name was Jeanette. She called herself polyhomerous because she was like, I don't have one home. I'm living all over the place. I'm like, that's amazing. But she was literally like living all over the world. Like she would go Airbnb somewhere, like our VRBO somewhere, stay with a friend somewhere. So I at least lease or buy a place.
This was originally born out of you trying to protect people from not being scammed. And that's such an interesting topic that behind the scenes, we've decided we're going to do that as a whole nother podcast.
Totally.
But I wanted to introduce you guys to Mariette today with this whole kind of breakdown. Give us your breakdown on the tips and tricks and the framework that you've created to help people for this incredibly stressful time of their life.
Yeah. So the framework was really born because I've made some really dumb moves. And in hindsight, I'm like, gosh, if I would have just thought about the finances, or if I would have just thought about how hard it would be to make friends, or if I would have just thought about this, I'm like, okay, what am I doing? I work in corporate America. We do a lot of frameworks. We do a lot of proofs of concepts. We do a lot of bake-offs. So that's where this all came from. So the FRED framework was born. I know it's not the sexiest name, but it's easy to remember. So what it is it's finances. So what you're going to need in that new city, how you're going to, pay your rent, your, mortgage, all that stuff. Your robustness, which is your mental and physical strength. Because like you said at the top of the show, this is like the third most stressful event in somebody's life, only to, death and taxes and divorce and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then your ecosystem. So what do you need to have in the community that you're living in to thrive? How are you going to make friends easily? Things like that. And I'll give you some stories about that. And then does this get you closer to your dreams, right? So what we do in the framework is we start with the dream, and then we reverse engineer you into the other things. So for example, if your dream is to move to New York City, the amount of money and the finances required to not only do a move to New York City, but live in New York City is going to be much different than if you're moving to like Kansas, right? So you have to look at it from a subjective perspective. And I know you talk a lot about finances and all of those things on your show. It is one of those things that can make or break a move, right? But even just taking it one step further, like once you've got a good, solid financial foundation, how do you feel? Like, do you want to work all day and then pack boxes at night? Are you physically strong enough to do that? Have you just lost somebody and you're grieving and maybe you're not mentally strong enough to move? Or maybe you're amazing and you're feeling the best that you've ever felt and now you're ready to make the move, right? So we got to look at that stuff and then go into the ecosystem, right? How are you going to make friends? Are there things that you can do before you get there to, jump into Facebook groups or, find a TikTok community and, and kind of prepare yourself. So when you land, it's not like you're starting from scratch. And then sometimes we revisit this and say, okay, like after you've done, one of the things I like to do is have people do a proof of concept in a city. And that means basically, I call it a city POC. And that's basically going to this city and spending a week or longer. And I know that might sound expensive, but it's not a vacation, it's market research. So you got to think about it that way, right? Like if you were to uproot your whole house, get out of your lease, rent or sell and have to pack up all of your stuff, you better make sure it's worth it to live in this new city. And even figuring out what neighborhood in the city, right? So sometimes doing the city proof of concept, spending a week or longer, because let's face it, anywhere you go is going to be magical for a weekend. Like you really want to get to know what's in this city. And then we revisit, is that dream really still the dream? So a fun example I'll give you is that I was working with a guy who he was like, Mariette, I have to move to San Diego. It has been my dream for the last 20 years. And I said, amazing. San Diego's great. I lived there, right? I loved it. So, and you live not too far from San Diego, David, right? So you probably go down there a lot. It's such a cool city. And I said, but when was the last time you were there? And he said, well, like I said, it was about 20 years ago. I said, oh, okay. Well, so why don't we go and spend a couple weeks there, right? And he's like, oh, that sounds really expensive. And I was like, it is. There's ways around it, right? You can find a friend, you can do a house swap, you can do a VRBO or Airbnb, or there's Furnished Finder, which is 30 days or longer, but you don't have all the fees and things like that come with doing like an Airbnb and stuff. But I said, you work remote, go and live there for a month and see if you really want to pack up all your stuff, sell your house, all that stuff. And I had him stay in 2 different places within San Diego, both places that he had visited that he thought were really cool. And he came back and he goes, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." And I said, "What happened? Are you packing right now and are you moving to San Diego?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "It is so different than what I remember." He's like, "It's loud and it's crowded and there's so many people at the beach. I just remember it being so tranquil." And he goes, "I'm just going to go visit once a year." And I was like, perfect. And so he didn't have to move and he's content and he can like check the box that he isn't going to do that dream anymore. And it's good. Right. So like, I think that things like that you can do to like practice before you or try before you buy, so to speak. And it wasn't the dream anymore for him. So we got to pivot back to the dream and see if it's still the dream. And if it is, great, let's go.
It's so interesting because, we work so many people, especially people that come to me who are practical people. They assume the dream is the dream.
Right.
Without actually investigating it. So then they do steps 1, 2, and 3. And then they go to the dream and go, well, this isn't what I wanted. So it's so great that you do that way. And I also totally agree with you. I think the proof of concept is a giant, talking to people for 20 years now who have been trying to figure out what's going to happen if they have to pick up and relocate.
Yeah.
The proof of concept, it doesn't mean you're like when you go to New York or you go to Chicago or you go to Miami on vacation. You can get a, not the hippest, coolest place, right. Maybe someplace with a kitchenette, and go to the grocery store your first day.
Yeah.
And then pack lunches and go see what the beaches are like, go see what the parks are like, find out. And there are definitely ways you can do that on the budget.
Yeah.
So, okay, where are you going after your dream then when you're helping people through this process?
Yeah, so we want to reverse engineer from the dream to finances, right? So part of it, when you're in the dream stage, though, you really, really, really want to niche it down. So I look at it like, okay, yes, it's like a what you're doing, but it's how are you feeling? What do you look like? How much money do you have in the bank? Like when you're looking at the dream, it's not necessarily what you're doing, because a lot of people identify with like their purpose or their job, but the dream could be like, I want to wake up in the morning and feel excited about my day. I want to go to the gym and I want to, have coffee down the street. And I want, like, that could be the dream. Like, what does your day to day look like? And then you take that dream and you reverse engineer into it, right? So that's when you go to finances. So you go back to the F, you go back to the beginning, and then take that. So what I do with my clients is I will go, okay, we'll use the New York City example again. So you go on to like realtor.com or, whatever Zillow or whatever you like to use to look at rentals, and find 3 different neighborhoods that you can rent in. And I put together a ChatGPT like prompt. I have a workbook called Moving for Smarties that you can get from my website. And it's free right now, but it's not going to be free forever. But basically in that prompt, it says like, I'm looking for a neighborhood where I can, you insert what you want to do. Like, I want to have good craft coffee shops. I want to have hiking close by. I want to have a church close by. Whatever it is that you identify as like part of your dream life. And you put it in there and have it spit out a couple neighborhoods for you. It'll say something like, I want a low crime rate area. I want the rent to be between this and this. And you throw it in there and it'll give you a couple neighborhoods that, would be good for you to look at. And then go on to the Zillows and the realtor.coms and plug in those numbers, right? Plug in that zip code and see what the average rent is. And really look at these places. Like, go look at the pictures and say like, okay, I really physically would go see that apartment if I was in that town to rent, right? And pick like 3 or 4 of those. Take that average rent and then find out what the details are for renting an apartment or buying a home in that city, right? Every city has different parameters. So with New York City, you have to go through a broker. You can't just go and look at an apartment on your own. You have to use a broker, right? So there are broker fees. So now you're adding, okay, I have a first month's rent, I have last month's rent, and then I have my month rent, right? Plus the broker fees. Now I want to have this much in the bank if I were to, lose my job on the first day of the, of that the day I move in, right?
Yeah.
So gathering all of those financial requirements and then seeing where you are in your own savings and your own like finances and how long it would take you to get there. Right. So I don't want people to be discouraged and say like, oh my gosh, that seems like so much. And it would take me a year to get there, because when you decide you want to go, you can get gazelle intense about getting there, right? People sell things, people, you come up with the ways, right? You pick up a side hustle, things like that. And I'm sure it's the same when you're buying a house, right? Like all of a sudden that 20% or even 5%, whatever it is that you're putting down, seems like a lot of money when you're looking at a $300,000 or $400,000 house. But if you really want it, you'll find a way, right?
And that's the biggest part of the whole financial picture. And when you are moving, if you're going to rent to try out a place before you buy a place, one of the things I tell people is when you're looking at the finances, don't rent the bougie place when you're going there. Right. Save some money. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's so great that you start with the dream and then you go to the finances, because like you said, I mean, using AI and ChatGPT is so helpful. Asking ChatGPT what those things are, it's so important, because there's a reason why artists live in artist lofts.
Yes.
They're not there for the place because they're not hanging out there. They're hanging out at the coffee shops and the bistros and everything around town.
Yeah.
So understanding your dream first helps to understand your finances. Is the actual living, dwelling shelter why you're going to the city?
Totally.
Or is it everything else in the city? I never even thought about it like that.
Well, and I'll give you an example too. When I lived in New York City, which if you're watching on YouTube, like my background was the view out of my window. It didn't feel that like cool and bougie when I was living in the apartment that I was living in, but my brother is a professional photographer and he took this picture. But I lived on the Upper East Side because it was more affordable, but I was literally right on the bus line to get right to the West Side where all the cool things that I wanted to do were, and I could cross through Central Park, which I love Central Park, right? So it was like I saved some money on the rent, but then I was an easy 10-minute ride from everything and everywhere I wanted to be. Right. So that's kind of how you have to look at it when you're trying to figure out where you want to live. Like, really, what are those finances? And you don't want to like overbuy or overpay your rent, because then you don't have fun. You don't have fun money, right? Like you don't have the money to do all the fun stuff that you want to do in that city.
And I think a lot of times when you're talking about going to a new city, maybe if you've got family there, but we're going to get into the other parts of this where we're talking about developing friends and let's face it, if you move to a new town for a job, you're not going to have a party with 85 people to your apartment the first night you're there. You don't know 8 people.
Right.
So your home, that dwelling, isn't necessarily the important part of what you're looking at when you're moving to someplace, especially for the first year. Okay, we do finances a lot here, helping people figure out with the home. Okay, where do we go to our next spot on Fred?
Robustness, right? So mental and physical strength. How strong are you right now mentally and physically to move? I will say that I've talked to a lot of people that have, either recently lost somebody or had a bad breakup, and the only thing they want to do is leave, right? And I get that. There's no right or wrong answer. Sometimes you if you look it up on ChatGPT, it'll say, wait a year. I don't necessarily believe that. But I will say, like, if you are doing the work and you know what could come up, right? So, spending time listening to podcasts like mine or, like yours, where you're prepared for when things come up, that's not going to make you mentally crash, right? Because it is so stressful. Like you feel like you're giving more money out than you've ever given out to anybody, right? Because it's not just like the buying or renting a place. Like you have to pay for movers and you have to pay for boxes and you have to pay for tape and all that stuff, right? So like mentally, if you're not in a strong place to be like, okay, this is all part of the thing. I budgeted for this, right? It could be like, oh my gosh, what? One more thing and one more thing, right? So I think mentally being physically strong and being self-aware about that, right? That's a big thing, because if you move, it could compound and compound. And I know that from personal experience. Like I moved through a super stressful time when I was in Charlotte and then moved to Indianapolis. That was my last move before I moved back to Chicago. And I really felt like I was strong enough at that point, but I don't think I was being honest with myself. And you really got to be honest with yourself on like how strong you really are. Because physically, you could probably pack up all day and, move boxes into a staging area and lift and shift and doing all that stuff. But if you are not mentally prepared for living like a nomad for a couple weeks or months, like that could be really tough on you. So you got to be prepared.
I was going to say, I loved, after I did your podcast and before I did your podcast, I was listening to a couple of the episodes. And then when I was scrolling through, like, you're incredibly cognizant, and a lot of the tips that you give are on mental health. Like, you bring psychologists and all kinds of like incredible guests on your show. It was amazing to me to see how deep you get into the mental aspect of moving.
Well, it's the third most stressful event in somebody's life, right? And they don't take that lightly. Most people, so they say people move 11.7 times in their life. So I don't know what that 0.7 is, but if you think about it, your average lifespan is like 80, 90 years old. So you're only really doing it like every decade. Sometimes you forget like the month or two after how stressful that just was, right? So you're like, oh no, I'm fine. But I'm also, dealing with work issues. I'm, moving jobs. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And you're like, oh, wait, maybe adding to the stress of doing that every single day is a lot. So what I tell people to do is like go to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you like to buy boxes. I personally like them from Home Depot. I have no affiliation, but I just think that they have the best boxes. Go to Home Depot and buy 5 boxes and put them in your living room and see how long it takes you to pack them, right? If you like grab tape and you tape them up and you pack 5 boxes and you're ready to go, like, okay, you might be ready. But if you're like, oh shoot, okay, I'm gonna do this thing and then I'll get to it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired right now. Maybe I'll take a nap and then I'll pack the boxes. And 3 weeks later, the boxes are still there. You might not be ready.
Wow.
Yeah.
I talk all the time on the podcast about how when people ask me a question, the answer isn't black and white. I need to talk to you for an hour. Actually, I need to listen to you for an hour. So you have, I'm sure that like you help people with like a calendar, but that's got to completely adjust because one person can pack in a weekend. One person is going to take 3 months. I never thought about it. What a great practice tip.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and everybody's different. And if you have like 2 people living in your household, like sometimes you're going to be imbalanced, right? One person's going to do a lot of packing, another one's not, and vice versa. And you have to be okay with where people are because it is a life transit. It's a life transition, and people forget you have to grieve your old home and your old community and your old life, right? Because once you move to a new place, it's a complete reset. Whether you're ready for that or not, it's coming for you because everywhere you go, there you are, right? So
one of the things that I've seen so much on my side is post-pandemic in this remote potential world where people get so frustrated with the affordability of owning a home that they just instantly say, well, I've made the decision I want to buy a home, so I'm going to do it. And then they just pick something where they can work remotely.
Yeah.
But it's purely on the finances.
Right.
And maybe they're not extroverted people. Maybe they're not people that go out all the time. But like you said, you're still going to the grocery store. You're still going to the dry cleaner. You're still going to your favorite places to eat. Yeah. So just because something financially makes sense doesn't mean, and maybe that's why you spend so much time bringing in all these, everyone from mental health to things all over the place on your podcast, because you've broken down this system. And what a great, I know it just fit in your acronym, the R for robust, but there's so many people online talking about living a life of abundance.
Yes.
And, with really big brimmed hats. But I really love the word robust because robust has an implication or an inference, God knows I don't know the difference, that you have some confidence in whatever it is that you're doing. If you're making the decision and you feel robust about making that move, that implies that you are then definitely have thought about this to agree that you can be confident, which is such a big step.
It is. It literally has the word strength in the title. And when I was going through the acronym, because I kept thinking like, well, am I physically strong or am I mentally strong? I'm like, you have to be both. Like physically, like I ruptured 3 discs in my back in 2023. And
of course you moved 187 times.
I know. It wasn't for moving though, ironically.
Get out.
But I thought about moving that fall, and had I not gone through the framework myself, I was not strong enough to move small boxes from one room to the next, right? Much less like, help somebody move a desk, right? So
Wow.
I really had to think about it, like, am I strong? And I also that year lost both of my dogs. They were like my children. I still am grieving. Like, I can talk about it, and I'm just now starting to talk about it without crying. So like you have to think about that stuff, because if you don't, when it hits you, it's going to feel so much harder biologically than it would if you were mentally strong. So that's a big one for me. And like you said, I have a lot of guests on the podcast about that. Like even ADHD, like I have ADHD. I know that word's been thrown around a lot. But there is a correlation between like the whole YOLO and being impulsive and then regretting your decisions, right? That was the first like probably 10 moves in my life. And until I understood that was a symptom of what I was, mentally dealing with, I didn't really understand that was like that impulsivity is a side effect of me, like the regret that I was feeling when I got to the new place, or maybe not feeling when I got to the new place, right? So thinking through that was a big part of me putting that in there and making sure that other people consider that too. Because sometimes, like, even if you ask, like, you and I are getting to know each other, but if I went to my best friend and said, hey, I'm thinking about moving, do you think I'm strong enough to do that right now? She's going to see things that I don't see, right? Like, oh, you're dealing with this though, but you're dealing with this. So maybe wait 3 months,
Wow, that's so insightful to just take a simple question to someone that you have trust with, but that's something I never would have thought about.
Yeah.
God, because I know what I'm going to get the truth if I turn and ask my wife something like that.
Right, too much truth, maybe.
Yeah, or my son.
Yeah.
He's in New York City right now, 18 years old. But what's really interesting is I could totally see once the decision was made, like he talks about how when there's a focus, he'd be awesome at packing.
Gazelle intense. Yep.
But I would have loved to have made sure that he had fretted before. Yeah. Because he might have made the decision based on one thing, and then it's utter and intense focus. And then he gets there, and then suddenly all the other things start to come into his brain.
Totally. Well, and sometimes like with ADHD, like some people use it as a fuel, right? Like I have like great corporate ADHD. Like it fuels my projects. I get things done because I can flip from things to things to things to things. But sometimes when you don't want to do something, like like bringing the 5 boxes in, you learn real quick how many other things you can get done outside of packing, right? Because I've done that too. So
and how intensely. Those 5 boxes will be there, but suddenly you will have 6 beautiful ceramic pieces because you just went out and bought the equipment yesterday.
Exactly. I'm like, why am I beating something? I don't, like I'm like creating this beautiful architectural, item but I should be packing. So yeah.
Okay. The E part is really interesting to me because this is something I talk to people about all the time. Yeah. Starting in real estate back in 2006, I was one of the first people who found Walk Score, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
Totally.
How walkable is where you live from 1 to 100, and I'm always keeping up with that kind of stuff. Tell us your tips for ecosystem.
So, a couple things. It depends on how much time you have before you move to the new city, right? Even if you're moving a couple communities over, this is really interesting because most moves are going to be short-term moves, right? So there's interstate where you're moving across state lines, and then there's intrastate, which is when you're moving within the state. So you could be moving 1 hour away and think like, oh, I'll just go and see my friends an hour away. But it's a whole different living situation, right? So what I love to do is tell people, and I know depending on how young or old your crowd is, which I think they're probably on the, middle age side, right? 20s to 40s or so, I would say, buying your first home.
Yeah. Unfortunately, last year, the average age was 38. So I've got 19-year-olds that are figuring out how to do it, but I have a ton of 35 and 40-year-olds that are on their second or third job position. Yeah. And this moving to someplace else for that upward mobility is exactly right in their wheelhouse.
This is perfect then because they probably have a Facebook account. So what I want them to do is I want you to get onto Facebook and say, moving to Orland Park, Illinois, moving to Kansas City, Missouri, moving to, and you type in that group, and I guarantee you've got 5 or 10 groups to choose from, even just moving to a specific state. Throw that in there and join all those groups. And what you can do, so you know this as a real estate agent, you cannot say many things, right? So you can't tell us what the crime rates are. You can't tell us if the schools are good or bad. You can't tell me a lot of things legally, which is okay, right? But Facebook communities can. So you can go in there and say, this is where I want to move. I'm a mom. I'm a single mom with 2 children and 2 dogs. Where's a great place to hang out for me, right? And then literally find those groups. Or are there any mom and me groups? Or, my son is autistic. Are there any good areas that have great schools, that have special programs that are federally funded? Whatever it is that you feel like, oh my gosh, in my dream life, if I could have this for, me, for my kid, for my dogs, for whatever, put it in Facebook. Somebody's thought of a group, right? So now you're connecting with people ahead of time, right? And you're already making friends. So when you go and do a city POC, you can do some meetups, right?
Mariette, you're a genius, because I tell people all the time, there are so many tools at your disposal and everything has some sort of reputation ahead of it. Right. And I tell people, strip away the reputations, yes, Reddit is a cesspool of whiners and complainers, but there is also, you can just tell right away, good people that are in there just seeking answers from somebody else. And you're totally right, because I don't talk about Facebook a lot on my podcast, but boy, in my realtor world, it is the number one source of information. Because if you go to Nextdoor here in Southern California, all it is coyote alert every 2 seconds.
North Carolina is the same. So just so you know.
Doesn't say anything else.
Doesn't say anything else, yep.
But those Facebook groups are the place where it's just so much about care and community. And so you might never use it, but damn, that's an awesome research tool.
Right. So the other one I like to use is Meetup. So Meetup is it's an app, right? And there's some wild meetup groups on there. I like to use Toastmasters, right? So in every city, there's got to be, I know in my little township of Orland Park, I think there's 2 or 3 Toastmasters groups that you can go. Toastmasters, for those that aren't familiar with, is like a public speaking group, but it's usually people who want to get up and, be better at public speaking, be better at meeting people, be better at networking events. Like, it's got a really good feel to it. And there is like a membership fee. There's Network After Dark. That's another tool through LinkedIn that you can use that has different cities have different networking groups that you can figure out who's going to be your friends in the new city. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Like I a long time ago, I don't do it anymore, but I used to be a runner. And what I would do is I would join local running groups. Most of the shoe stores, like the local, like Fleet Feets or, local running shoe stores, usually have some sort of running group. I was back of the pack. I literally I'm 5'2", so I run like a 12-minute mile, and I would go in and say like, hey, do you have a running group? They'd be like, yeah, we meet on the running group on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. and there's all different levels. Just go and, join us that day and we'll run. No one, some of them were serious runners, which was always, those are the people that I would be hanging out with. But there was always people that I would get to talk to while I'm running. And then afterwards we'd go grab a drink somewhere. So there's all kinds of different groups that you can join depending on what you're into. But Facebook has a lot of really good, you can ask for suggestions and people have no shortage of suggestions. Let's just put it that way, or opinions, right?
Okay, wait. So the runners group, run down the other one for me. You got Toastmasters.
Toastmasters, yep. Meetup, which is an app. Yep, all one word. The Facebook groups, any of the Facebook groups.
And the groups, you're saying just go in there and search a group.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about for a while moving to Florida, because the team that I lead, they're in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. So I was considering moving to Florida. I have some friends in Ponte Vedra. So I joined a couple different groups. I searched moving to Florida and there were 30 groups that came up. So I just joined the top 5 that had the most people in them. And then I specifically went to moving to Ponte Vedra. that's a suburb in Florida, right? And there were a
Wow.
lot. There were a lot of mom groups, which I'm not a mom. I used to have fur babies, but not real babies.
Yep.
But so it gave me a little bit of a demographic that I would be, working with, because there weren't that many singles groups that I could find, right? And I
Yeah.
wasn't looking for like men's single group. I was just looking for like people to hang out with, right?
Yeah.
Facebook friend, what is it? Bumble friends. Bumble is an app. It's a dating app, but they actually have a part of the app that's for friends only. So it's like you're not looking to date somebody, you're just looking to make friends. And that's been effective for people too. I haven't used it myself, so I can't speak to how it is in real life. But I have some friends that like totally made friends that way, and are still friends with them today. So
Wow.
yeah.
My gosh, I'm learning so much, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface.
Totally. Totally.
Okay, we're gonna put all your information in the show notes,
Okay.
but tell everyone the name of the podcast and where they can find you, and then we'll let them search for more later.
Yeah. So it's Moving Tips and Tricks, and kind of in parentheses, like for people considering a relocation. It's a very long title, but it really is. I only about 50% of the people that I talk to actually end up moving. So that's why I put on there that it's for considering. So it's Moving Tips and Tricks is the easiest way to find it. If you go to decidingtomove.com, that is my website. You'll have a little pop-up when you get there. And if you join the email list, for a limited time only until May, I'm giving away Moving for Smarties, which is a 27-page workbook that teaches you how to, or it's kind of a journal that helps you figure out where to move, when to move, why you should move, and if you should move. So it's a very colorful printout that you can use. And I'm Mariette's on the move on almost every social media platform.
And if you heard her here from How to Buy a Home, make sure you tell her, and then you'll get special treatment.
Totally.
I don't know. I could force her on the air right now to tell her that she'll extend the free for people from How to Buy a Home podcast, but it's not my decision to make.
Well, if it is not free when you go and listen to this and you join, shoot me an email. You can do that straight through my email, and I will send it to you specifically for free.
Awesome. You just have to say, I'm a homie.
I'm a homie, and I will know exactly who you are, because I'm a homie too.
And it's super important, gang. Check out the podcast. But again, we live in this ether of people trying to help people, and she's got another corporate job.
Yeah,
and
I'll make money on this. Share
this with your friends, because there aren't a lot of people out there that are trying to do the good work that's happening. And I was so pleased. I mean, again, doing this for 6 years, eventually you end up running into the people that have these incredibly wonderful missions. So I appreciate it. And we're going to get back next time, and we're going to talk about what really started you in this, how to protect people from the scams of moving.
Oh, there's so many, you guys. It's scary. Yes, we will.
I was going to say, for someone who's got a little show business in you, that's not the most positive teaser right there.
Join us for moving. So what is it? 5 red flags of a moving scam and what to do if you've been duped, right? We'll call it that.
The funny thing is, you're probably going to want to come back for that.
Because there's some good juicy ones in there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Gigantic thank you to Mariette. And you know what? We've got more from her. Yeah, that's just part 1 of the help with the moving psychology, not to mention practical tips on actually how to do it. And I've got more, and that's coming in a future episode. So in the meantime, you can do your part to keep this revolution going. Share this podcast with your friends. I get so excited when I do interviews and I talk to other people who have found how to buy a home, and they share it with all their friends who are renting, and they're like, dude, you can do this. And their friends are like, no way. And they're like, bro, remember how you came over to my housewarming party? I'm telling you, if I can do it, you can do it. Share this information and write a review, leave us 5 stars, and take a little minute to write something too. If you write some words down, it really helps. I appreciate it. I'm here for you. And remember, you can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuyaHome.com to get started.